Hello, and welcome to Lesson 16 of Speed Puzzling 101 Tips and Tricks, quick speed puzzling lessons in under 10 minutes. Today's lesson is on placing every piece that you touch. As a disclaimer, there is no single correct way to put a puzzle together. What may work for some may not work for others. My advice is to try as many different strategies and approaches as you can and see what works for you. For today's lesson, you will need a busy 500-piece puzzle. Try to avoid anything with large sections of solid colors, or sections that are very hard to distinguish, like a forest or a large body of water. A space large enough for a 500-piece puzzle, depending on which approach you will take once I get to the examples. You may or may not need space for all the extra pieces as well, but as long as you can assemble an entire 500-piece puzzle in that space, you should be fine. And as always, as this is speed puzzling, a timer. Today's lesson is focusing on placing every single piece as soon as you touch it. The goal is to never stop moving your hands. When we watch videos of the top speed puzzlers in the world, they all have one thing in common, and that is that they do not stop moving their hands at any point. They are always placing pieces within the puzzle. However, the pieces aren't always being attached to something else, but they are being placed in the general area that they will connect at some point. So today I will go through two examples that try to emulate this process on a slower scale. But regardless of which example that you may try, the goal is to never spend time searching for a specific piece. You are constantly just placing pieces somewhere within the puzzle. This will do two things. First, you're going to be forced to look at the image. I know there are quite a few of us, myself included, that probably don't spend enough time looking and studying the image to know where things go. We're pretty much puzzling based on trying to identify patterns that we recognize, instincts, and vibes. However, with these approaches, you will be forced to look at the image. However, the further you get into the puzzle, the less you're going to have to rely on the image because you would have looked at it so intensely near the beginning, and for every piece that you're picking up, you're going to know the image very well. So by the end, you're just going to be filling in the remaining gaps quite quickly. Second, you're also going to be essentially sorting the puzzle, but instead of sorting them into piles and placing them somewhere else on the table, you're sorting the pieces to where they're eventually going to go within the puzzle once everything is connected. So you're taking out one of the steps that may waste time. It's going to lower the number of times you need to touch a piece as well, which is always the goal. So let's go into the two examples. Starting with the first example, I'm doing the regular flip and sorting out the edges. It's going to take me a little bit longer to do this because I want to get every single one of the edges if possible. I'll probably still miss a few. And then the edge is going to take a little bit longer than usual as well, because the goal here is every piece I touch should be connected to another one, or at least put in the general area it's going to go. Building up the edge is going to also kind of influence what I do next. You'll see I go straight for the sky. If the piece doesn't attach, I'll leave it in that general area on where it belongs. As I continue through this, you'll start to see random pieces being put into the puzzle. These are just ones I have touched within the main pile, and they're being placed in the general area I think that they will go or connect eventually. It starts to look a little bit chaotic, especially at the start, but things start coming together fairly quickly. I am going a little bit slower because I'm not collecting a whole bunch of pieces at once. I'm doing it piece by piece, and I'm trying to see what else connects within the puzzle. You'll start to see that the brighter colors tend to go first because that's what attracts the eye. While I am looking at the pieces inside of the puzzle, I'll be glancing over at the image quite a bit to see what fits. Maybe something's gone wrong where I've placed a piece inside. But you'll start to see groups coming together a lot quicker once I start moving through this puzzle. The problem with that you can run into, and you'll start to see this especially in some of these areas, there's a lot of loose pieces and they do take up a little bit more space. So every so often I just need to double check that they actually do connect, and I can start to save some space. You'll see it happen there with the red on the side, much cleaner now. Same with the white bits on the left, a little bit cleaner, and then you're going to start really picking up speed in these last few hundred pieces or so. Because now you're looking at shape, but really everything is going to connect to something else. So these last 50 pieces are going to go through quite quickly. Continuing with example number 2, there is no flip taking place here. I'm not even dumping the pieces out onto the table. So this is something you can practice in a very limited amount of space. But every piece that I pull out, I'm consulting with the image in front of me and placing that piece in the general area it's going to eventually connect. And I'll start building each of those sections. So at the start, it's going to look very, very random like it is now, but you can see similarities in every single aspect on the table. What I'm doing here is essentially sorting the pieces one by one, but they're all starting to come together slowly. As I work my way through, I'm going to become more familiar with whatever the image is, and I'm going to have to look at that box less and less as I progress my way through. But you can start to see, again, areas coming together, and because I can start to see where these holes are, whatever piece I pull out of that box, again, I'm going to have a pretty good idea on where it goes. Some pieces I'll need to wait for more to come together, like that green-orange section that's more towards the middle. More pieces needed to come out for that. Same with the blue disc. I'll have a lot of the blue pieces, but until I have all of them, or a good chunk of them, putting them together to make the main shape can be a little bit more difficult. In the corner where it's mostly black pieces, that's going to be, again, another area that's going to have to wait until I have a few more pieces to put together. But as we continue through, within the box, I'll shuffle it up every so often, so there's a few more pieces with the face up. I'm not having to flip any of the upside down pieces one by one. That's going to take up extra time. But again, working my way through, every piece that I touch will go somewhere within the puzzle area. You'll see a few exceptions there, again, with the black pieces. Similar to what we saw in example 1, I don't want those black pieces or those loose pieces taking up a ton of extra space, but they're still in the general area that they're going to eventually go. So when I do get to that area, like now, they go in easier. At the start, your times may not seem as quick. The 2 examples I showed today, the times on the timer were slower than my fastest attempts doing this in my own way. That's not the purpose in these types of lessons, to get super quick, super fast. Is to build up a range of skills that you can use once they're all combined will save time later on. And remember, the goal of today's lesson is to make sure your hands never stop moving and you're not wasting time looking for a specific piece. Every piece you need is in the box, usually. So that specific piece you need and maybe wasting time looking for, it will eventually show up. So you might as well do something else until it makes an appearance somewhere on the table. You can also use this for practice for your non-dominant hand and use it to place pieces. What I didn't show in the examples and will be part of a follow-up lesson in the future is that eventually you should be building up to the point where both hands are being used and you're alternating back and forth between the two while you're placing the piece where it's supposed to go with your right hand, your left hand is picking up the next piece. And as the next piece is being placed in the left hand, once you look at it, the right hand is picking up a new piece. But that's for further down the road. Because before we get to that, the double dexterity needs to be built. Coming up very soon on this channel, I will be giving out a 1-month challenge for people to try to build up their dexterity and ability with their non-dominant hands. That is it for lesson 16 of Speed Puzzling 101 Tips and Tricks. Click like if you enjoyed it or found it helpful. Leave a comment below with a suggestion or a question. And as always, click subscribe so you stay up to date with everything released on this channel. Next week is a busy week on this channel with up to 5 videos being released to kick off the month of December. The return of my puzzle story chapters will resume with chapter 14 being released, where I will talk about the individual rounds at the World Championships 2025. A 2-part collaboration series will be released sometime next week, which I'm very excited about, as well as the next lesson of Speed Puzzling 101. And episode 9 of Puzzled and Chatty will also be released, where I sit down with another Canadian speed puzzler. So until then, I will see you for another lesson next week. Class dismissed, and as always, happy puzzling. Bye.